Ferris, let's start from the beginning. I want to start with your story with the English language. So, how did you learn English? Now, I know that many people have different stories about how did they learn English. Obviously, you have picked up an American accent. It's very obvious. So, what's your story with the English language? How did you learn it? Was it at school? Did you do this on your own? Did you get help? What's your story with the English language? Let's start from there.
Yeah. So English actually has been a language that I loved, and I really wanted to learn it because of the movies that I watched um, as a kid,
What
and
were
then it
your
grew
favorite movies back then?
action movies.
Action movies,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I like the fighting and the martial arts.
Yeah, it's the same,
Yeah,
but well, yeah, when you are a kid, that's what you love.
yeah. That's
Action
right.
movies
That's
are
right.
the best. Hmm.
Yeah. So I felt like the strength was there. Like I mean, it's not only the muscles; it's also the language.
Hmm.
So yeah, I grew an interest in the English language, especially after, or let's say at middle school. I had a great teacher actually back then. I don't know if you know her, Bayud.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She actually, and there is another one that's called Buzian. I still didn't forget them. They marked me. Back then, they gave me great feedback, and in terms of learning the language and so on and so forth. And because it's not because I was the smartest kid in the class, it's just because everybody else didn't raise any interest in the language,
Hmm.
and it was like a free time for us. So back then, I really wanted to learn the language. I really wanted to speak it as well as the movies.
Hmm.
Then when I went to high school, I started having let's say a crush on English,
Hmm.
I started listening to music, to songs, hip hop, R&B, and so on and so forth. That time the MP3 was created, and it was exposed in markets, and I bought one. Like you put that battery, and that battery
Yeah.
dies quickly. So I went to school. I went to high school with that MP3 and listening to music and trying to rap with them and trying to sing with them at the same time, trying to repeat what the singer was saying. Um, until actually once I remember uh, the battery died, and I didn't have the money, actually to buy the battery, another battery. So I had to put the earpieces, like in order to listen to the music. So I just put the earpiece without the MP3 because I left it at home, and I put it in my pocket, and I walked down the street going to the high school. And I actually, back then, didn't want to ride a car, or I just wanted to walk. I walk to school, and I started trying to sing, and so that people don't say that I was crazy. I had the yeah. I tried to speak to myself. I tried to communicate in English, and walking down the street. At that
Hmm.
time, I wanted to communicate. Like it was only receptive for me, and receptive, and I tried to imitate as well in order for me to be able to speak. But however, I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak
Mm.
that time. I couldn't
Mm.
make a conversation. I couldn't strike it. So I reached a point where Skype was there. So I tried to look for names. Um, I try to look for people in order to speak with them the language, and this is a problem, by the way. Like a lot of people would like to learn speaking, but they can't find a person that to speak with.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I typed a lot of different names. Skype back then had the option of looking for different people even if you don't know them. So I tried to type names of Americans, of foreigners. I didn't know the difference. I didn't understand the difference back then, between British and Americans. So I found this guy called Bill, Bill Ormshire. He's an old fella. He was in his 60s back then. I'm talking 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I guess. This guy was actually an angel from Sky. He was a stock investor, and he had a long time on his PC. So when I found him, he was actually bored. So he just he needed someone to speak to.
Okay.
So yeah, when I popped up, he started speaking to me in English. Hello, how are you? This and that. I couldn't answer, like that was my first encounter with a foreigner. So whenever I see him smile, I say yes. Whenever I see him angry or poker face, I just say no. Those are the only two words that I used with him in the beginning, because I had that, language barrier, especially his accent. I couldn't understand anything that he was saying, especially when you are, when you are targeted with a certain speech and certain questions, you can't answer.
Sure.
Yeah, and then later on, he understood that I didn't understand him, so he wrote a question: "Do you speak English?" I said no. He said, "Do you want me to teach you?" I said yes.
Did he propose that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You're lucky. That doesn't happen often.
I was pretty lucky.
That
Yeah,
you would just type a name on Skype and then get a guy, and the guy is American and you are interested in English, and then the guy is going to say, "Do you want me to teach you?" And you say, "Of course."
Actually, he gave me an appointment. He said it was 8 p.m. Algerian time back then. From 8 to 10, he always gave me these 2 hours every day, every single day. He never missed
every day,
a
2
class.
hours.
He never missed. Even if he missed, he would talk to his wife, and his wife would sit with me, because it was a commitment that he made.
Well, that's quite a story. I mean,
it is.
This doesn't happen often. And when you were having these sessions with him, or these chats with him for 2 hours, how was he teaching you the language?
He would speak most of the time, and he would write, some 3 words, 4 words, for example, down in the chat box, and I would write them down because I had my notebook. I'd write them down, and he would say, "You need to learn them in English, not in your language."
Sure.
Yeah.
That is, use the English language.
Exactly.
Even in the when you would look for the word, you would look for it in English dictionary. You mean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you think this has helped you? That is, your contact and exposure to native speaker language, accent.
Listening. Because that was the first exposure, actually, to for me, especially back then, when I was trying to, and still we're learning every day.
How old were you at that time? You were like teenager?
I was 15,
something like 15. That. Okay. And I guess back at that time, YouTube was not yet the thing, right? It wasn't.
No.
So now you can get exposure to the language mostly from YouTube, especially to natural language, because we talk about movies, but movies are not always natural. Like these are good, but they are not natural. Like this is scripted, and then this is acting. But now on YouTube, you can get natural speech. And so you were exposed to that early on, before there was that. That's good. Yeah.
And I realized something, like when the speech is directed to you, your brain works faster than if the speech is somewhere else, like on TV, for example.
That's
two people are
interesting.
speaking.
How do you think this helped you? That is, the fact that he was talking to you and addressing you, and the way you have absorbed at that time the language or the accent, or how do you think
That
this really helped you?
there was a point where I had to understand everything faster. I had to answer at the same time, and I didn't want to look like an idiot. So
Mm,
yeah, he would speak fast, naturally, because they're not like British people. British people, would slow down a little bit,
sure.
um, because they would think that you don't understand or something. But the Americans know. The Americans,
Mm,
it's their natural, pace. So he would keep the same pace, and I would want to, keep up with that pace. So this made my brain think at the same time, like I need to answer now. I need to answer immediately.
mm,
But listening as a listening practice, like you listen from TV, you listen from, I don't know, like to songs, for example. The speech is not addressed to you, as you said, and it's not directed to you. So your
sure.
brain just works in a very slow, harmony where you just need to understand. That's all, because you don't have to answer. If you are directed by that speech, if you're addressed, you will need to do double work. Your brain needs to understand and needs to reply at the same time. So
And like there
receptive,
is,
productive.
yeah, and like there is listening for a purpose. This is what we want usually when we are listening. We want like a purpose. Otherwise, we are just taking things in. We don't have any. Sometimes, if you are engaged in a conversation like I am right now, I'm listening to every word and I'm absorbing every word. And sometimes if I'm not engaged, I don't mean these kind of conversations, but other conversations that I've had even in English, if I'm not engaged, um, I understand what the person is saying in terms of speaking in English, but my brain is not taking in anything because I'm
Yeah,
not
I
engaged. That
you would
is, there
call
is no interest, there is no purpose.
you would
Yeah,
call this the active listening versus the passive
exactly.
listening. Yeah.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
active listening is the one that helps people a lot. It's the one actually that gives you the luxury of trying to get all the words from your subconscious and convert them into the conscious in order for
Hmm.
you to be able to reply. There is a bridge that has to be built between the subconscious, because that's where memory is, and that's where we store our words, the terminology. Now, if you, for example, hypnotize a person that learns a lot of words, a lot of terminology, you would know that they have a lot of terminologies, a lot of
Mm,
vocabulary. But the
mm,
problem is that there is a block in here, which is called translation. So they have to translate first. They have to
sure.
understand, in order for them to say, so the gap
Hmm.
fillers, they use the gap fillers in
Hmm.
order for them to bridge between the subconscious and the conscious. So it takes a big effort for them in order to be able to speak and communicate properly.
Mm. And I'm curious. I'm still curious about.
Is this
So
if you ever
so
watches
how
this,
long
it's gonna
have
be
you
nice.
done this for? 2 hours, you said
um
every day, didn't miss a day. How long did you did do this for?
can you believe it? It was only for 6 months.
Only 6 months is a long time. Only? I thought that you were going to say it was only for 6 days. No, six
Yeah,
months is a long time.
6 months fully committed, fully
No,
devoted.
6 months is
Yeah,
a long time. Now you
yeah.
will find the teacher following you for 6 months now. Like
You
they
pay
would
high
follow you
bucks.
for
Yeah,
like 3 months and then say, okay, you are on your own.
correct. Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
but at the end of these 6 months, how did your English improve?
By the end of those 6 months, actually, like there was an interruption in the connection between us, because he had a financial crisis, and the stocks were really down.
Mm.
and he would also almost lose his house in Texas, Plano. So, like, let's say 3 months
I think this was
later.
back in 2008.
No, it was actually later. It was
Okay.
2015, 16, I guess. There was a crash in the stock market.
Yeah, because
Uh,
the crash in the stock market, I thought you were talking about the 2018, 2008, sorry,
yeah.
crash.
There was a 2008 crash, and there was a 2000. The 2008 crash was actually real estate plus stocks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It
And
hit the
this one
world.
was only stocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think even it was only in the American market. So
Hmm.
3 months later, he would call me. Okay, he would call me on the phone, and I just start, like, speaking to him in English, and he would just, start crying for
Mm,
5 minutes straight.
my
Like, he would
God,
keep crying
like
because
depressed.
no, he felt like he achieved something with this person. Like, he said, "Is that
You
you,
were
really?"
talking about the English language. I thought you were talking about the stocks. You were
No,
talking about yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You were talking about your level in English.
yeah,
He
yeah.
would cry.
I swear.
That is your this would say something about your level by after 6 months, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like,
And
he
it
he he
started
didn't believe it.
so it started with saying yes, no to communicating.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, the essential question there. Do you think that 6 months of communicating for, let's say, an average of an hour, okay, with a native speaker can take your English language level to from zero to intermediate easily? That is this something that you can say for sure can happen?
I can really vouch on that. Like, I would say 6 months straight, fully committed, fully devoted. I wouldn't say 1 hour, because that would have to, spread out throughout the day.
Yeah, this is why I said
Um,
an average
yeah,
of one
like,
hour,
you
an
live the
average.
language, you
Yeah, yeah,
live
yeah.
it.
Hmm.
So, for example, let's say you watch a video in the morning after you have breakfast, and then you
So
would
you
go
were
to.
doing other activities at the same time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm,
Read a book, for
with
example.
the book.
So there are two receptive skills, as you know. So the listening and the reading are all about reception, and speaking and writing are all about productivity. So what would happen, like, during my day back then, was that I learned words, I read a text, I listened to something, and in the evening I would talk to him. Like, I would show him productivity.
Mm, hmm, hmm, hmm.
Yeah, so we would talk on a certain subject. For example, let's say poverty, let's stocks, for example, economy. We would just, bring up any topic and start speaking about it. But the provided that the topic that we speak about is something that I practiced in the morning,
Sure,
for example,
sure.
during the day.
So that you had
But
something to say about the topic.
exactly.
Okay. So during this time and during the time when you were learning English, that is from beginner to, let's say, intermediate,
Yeah.
whether you were having these conversations with this guy or other activities, did you intentionally study the grammar and the pronunciation?
Never.
Never,
Never.
never. So you didn't like take I don't know, a course. When I say a course, I mean a book, like with exercises in phonetics, in pronunciation, in the tenses. No.
I didn't find it necessary. However, I studied at a private school there.
At
It was
here Hassi School?
Has Hasi school, yes.
Yes, with Mr.
But
Sammo.
some mode, right? So
Hmm.
the methodology was totally different. It wasn't only grammar; it was communication based.
Yes.
They wouldn't like they didn't teach us something like, let's say, for example, present simple. Let's do present simple. I am, you are,
Yeah.
he is, she.
It's not like at school.
Exactly. So they
Mhm.
would just give us conversational materials. Um, they would just push us to speak. That
So
was
you
all
you
about it.
did you studied at the private school, at the language school, at the same time that you were talking or having these conversations with the guy, same time you were
Correct.
doing the reading activities, listening and watching and listening to music, all of this. So you were
But there is,
basically living English.
yeah, there is a point here. I didn't do it because I had to do it. I did it
Yeah.
because I enjoyed it.
This is why I said you were living English.
Yeah,
This
correct.
was not for your school, like an assignment
Absolutely
or
not.
something like that. This is something that you wanted to do.